All right, so for California community colleges, we're going to go over types, kind of what you can pursue while you're there, and kind of what to expect. We'll go over the application process, registration process. You can kind of decide if this is a good fit for you. And if, again, more questions, please feel free to use the chat and we can answer specifics as well. Okay. So for California community colleges, there are 115 total. There are more local options in the state of California than other universities. So if you're looking at something like a California State University or a UC, they're a lot fewer and they're a little bit more spread out. So our community colleges are considered our local options. They do not have dorms, so they are considered commuter schools for the most part. Even if they do have sort of like housing options to help students find housing off campus, there are only maybe one or two that actually have like official dorms or on-campus quote unquote housing. So that's something to take into consideration if you are considering community college, that you will be commuting, or you know, if you do decide to move out, you'll be living on your own and still having to find your way to school. So you will not be able to live on campus. So some admissions requirements. So admissions requirements for California community colleges, there's a couple ways. So students can gain admission by being 18 years old or older, or have graduated from high school or have a high school equivalent. So you do not have to have all three. Students can have either or. Most of our students will have their high school diploma, and that's how they will gain the basic admission to California community colleges. And again, if you're outside of the state of California, make sure that you are looking at your specific community college's admissions requirements and you're doing your research on that. But for most of the Western United States, Southwestern United States, this is pretty standard. Okay, so costs. What are the costs of community college? This can be a big drawing factor for students, right? They are significantly cheaper than going to a four-year university. So understanding what exactly you're paying for at a community college is going to be very important, right? With anything else, you want to know what your budget is and what you need to plan for the upcoming year. So here are some fixed costs. These are fixed costs because these are things that will not change and that are pretty much standard and applicable to everybody. So per unit, it is $46 per unit. So if you're in high school and you're not really sure what a unit is basically a credit. Each credit costs money at a college. So for a community college, it is $46 per unit, which is significantly cheaper than, say, like a CSU or a UC, where sometimes they can cost up to $1,000 per unit if you break it down. Each class is typically 3 to 4 units. So if you do the math there, you can kind of see what you're going to be averaging. And this is without financial aid. So this is with no assistance. Most community colleges will have student health fees, right? So you want to make sure that you understand what you're being charged for and what you'll have access to with that fee. And then you want to have an ID card as well. Even if, you know, now it's a little bit different, we're virtual, so maybe you don't feel like you have a need for a physical ID card, but it's still important to get one, right? You can get a lot of discounts with them as well, but they do cost money. So make sure, again, that you understand what that cost is. Some variable costs, so costs that will change depending on the student, the major, and their situation. Some things like books and materials, your lab fees. So if you're taking a bio class, a chem class, anything associated with those classes, you want to make sure that you have those. Parking permits, so maybe not a huge deal right now since we're online, but in the future, if we do go back to in-person classes, parking permits will be something that you need to look into if you will be driving to campus. And then public transportation, right? So if you will be taking the bus or the train, you want to know how much you're budgeting and what's the most cost effective. There are a lot of student discounts for public transportation, so you want to make sure that you're asking about that too. Okay. So there are a lot of financial aid options for community college students. And again, this is specific to the state of California. So if you are, again, tuning in from out of state, make sure that you're looking at the financial aid opportunities in your particular state. So available to community college students, the FAFSA, let me go back. The FAFSA, or the California Dream Act. So this is where the college is going to get all of your financial information to determine how much aid you're eligible for, whether that's from the state, from the federal government, or from the school itself. It's really important that you're filling out the FAFSA or the California Dream Act, which are both currently open. They open October 1st and they're due March 2nd. So just a plug, make sure you're doing that early. And even if you feel like you're not eligible for need-based financial aid based on your income or your parents' income, a lot of scholarships will ask that you fill out the FAFSA or the California Dream Act as a requirement as well, so they can kind of assess what your financial need is too, even if they're not a financial needs scholarship. So two very key and important pieces of financial aid. So make sure that you're filling out that. Another piece of that is the Cal Grant. So at California Community Colleges, you are eligible for a Cal Grant B or C. A Cal Grant C is specifically for students who are pursuing a career vocational program. So maybe you want to do something like automotive technology or cosmetology, you can be eligible for a Cal Grant C. So if you're a California high school student, you can be eligible for a Cal Grant. There's also the federal Pell Grant from the federal government. There are school-specific grants. The EOP&S grant is specific to certain schools, so they can award you for money, for food vouchers, things like that. Student Success Completion Grant and other institutional awards and California Promise Grant, all free money that is available to you as a California community college student. So there is a lot of opportunities for funding, so it's really important that you stay on top of the deadlines, that you're asking questions, and that you know what is available to you at whatever school that you're going to. Okay. So why do students choose community colleges? There's a variety of reasons, right? And if you're exploring them right now, then you have your own reasons too, right? So some of the typical reasons, it is a lower cost, as we just saw, compared to a four-year university. You have an option of staying more local after graduation. Some students aren't ready to go further away yet, or maybe aren't ready to go to a bigger school yet, which is totally fine. Concerns about attending a four-year university. So again, maybe it's the class size, maybe it's the material, and it could just be overall apprehension, right? It's a big change. You're able to raise your GPA to attend a four-year university. So maybe you didn't quite meet that GPA requirement that you needed to apply, or maybe you didn't get into the school that you initially wanted to. Community college is a great option. As mentioned before, you can pursue a certificate or a vocational program. So again, cosmetology, automotive technology, medical assistant, all of those programs are available at community colleges. A lot of students would like to transfer to a four-year, so whether that's in state or out of state. And then other students are interested in getting their associate's degree. And we'll talk about what that is, what an associate's degree is. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so again, just a list of the different degrees and certificates. You can get an Associates of Arts, an Associates of Science. We'll go into more details again about what all of this means. An associate degree for transfer. So again, if you want to transfer to a four-year university in the state of California. Transfer certificate, a vocational certificate, and in certain California community colleges, there are specialized bachelor's degrees programs. And so if that's something that interests you, that's something to do more research on, a lot of them are a little bit more technical focused. So maybe they're more medical or they have more hands-on approaches, but there are some bachelor degree options at certain California community colleges. Okay, so what is an associate's degree? So an AA, an Associates of Arts, or an AS, Associates of Science, are typically two-year programs, more or less, right? Students will gain an introductory level of understanding to their area of study. So unlike a full four-year major, you're not going to go as in-depth as getting your two-year degree or your associate's degree, but you will get that introductory level of understanding so you can, you know, whether you want to pursue a job with that degree or you do want to transfer, you'll have that basic level of understanding. Courses for associates programs, they consist of general education and then specific areas of concentration. So, you know, in high school, how everybody has to take certain, you know, classes to graduate, regardless of what their plans are, right? Math, English, history, the same thing. That's what general education is. So you still have to complete those basic requirements and then anything that is specific to your major or area of study. And then again, students can also choose to transfer after they receive their AA or AS degree. Okay, so what does it mean to transfer from a California community colleges to a four-year university? So students who are transferring from a California community colleges to a four-year university are transferring the units that they earned. So remember, we talked about each class is, a certain amount of units, similar to credits, and you need a certain amount of credits in order to transfer, right? So they're looking at how many units you've completed at the community college before you go on and transfer to your new school and university. So all of those credits that you're earning, they're going towards your bachelor's degree, your 4-year degree at your new school. So an example would be, say you start freshman and sophomore year of high school at one high school, and then you move into another one and complete your 11th and 12th grade years, right? You don't start over. You are adding on to the credits that you already have in order to get that degree. In the example, the high school diploma, but once you're transferring, that bachelor's degree. And again, if this is a little bit confusing or the first time that you're kind of hearing about what it means to transfer or what the details are, that's totally okay. Again, please feel free to use the chat and then we'll answer some questions. But yeah, don't feel overwhelmed if this is a lot of new information for you. Okay, so some more details about general education courses. So again, all students must take general education courses, whether you're getting an associate's degree or whether you're trying to transfer or any combination. So again, there are courses in different subjects that students must take to complete their degree. So they include, the basic subjects, right? Math, English, science, history. And then there's different ways that you can complete those requirements. So unlike high school where, you have to take world history and US history and then government, and those are kind of the only options you have, there's different topics that can go in and complete those requirements. So maybe it's an English class, but there's a specific topic like Chicano literature or literature from the Great Depression era, right? So a certain topic that still is going to fulfill that English or whatever class that is, fulfill that requirement, but something that maybe you're a little bit more interested in. So that's something to look forward to. In college, you do have a little bit more choice in the classes that you pick and how you want to complete these requirements. And then again, GEs are necessary to receive an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And it's important that you really know the details of what the GEs are, how many classes there are, and what are your different options. So it's important to know this because it can help you select your major early. So if you're taking these general education classes and say you take an intro psych class to complete a requirement and you realize, wow, I really do enjoy psychology or, whatever it is. These classes, it's not only completing requirements, but can help you, gain a little bit more experience in some classes that maybe you had never taken before. Maybe it sparks an interest in something that you can further pursue. So it's not just about completing requirements, but also what can you get out of these classes too. So again, you can select your major early, and then you can start by, getting these transferable classes out of the way as well. All right. Okay, so here are a couple different ways to transfer to a 4-year college. Again, this is specific to the state of California, California community colleges, and our CSU and UC system. So there's something called an associate degree for transfer. And with this associate degree for transfer, students can earn a guaranteed spot in a participating 4-year college. So it's really important to focus on the language, right? A participating 4-year college. This does not mean that all of the colleges that you are planning to apply to will accept this ADT, and that doesn't mean every major will be accepted into the ADT. So this is just some introductory information about the program, but it's really important that if this seems like something that you would like to pursue, that you do talk to a counselor about it and that you do your own research as well. Okay, so going on, so it's an easier way to transfer to a Cal State, to a UC, or to an HBCU, a historically Black college or university. And you can choose whether it's an AA degree, whether Associates of Arts, or an AS degree, Associates of Science. But again, it's only for certain participating universities. And the plan itself, it lays out exactly what you need to do in order to get your associate degree for transfer. Counselors are aware of it on your community college campus. So it is something, again, that can make it a little bit easier, but you want to make sure that you know the specifics and what schools are participating in it. Okay, so another pathway to transfer in the state of California is a transfer admission guarantee, specifically for the UCs, the TAG program. So in order for students to be eligible for the TAG program, they have to complete 60 semester units or 90 quarter units. take the appropriate amount of classes for the major, so those major requirements, those major prereqs. Pass all of your classes with a C or better, so that's really important. You know, in high school, sometimes you can get credit for getting a D in a class, but for college, specifically for your major requirements and for transferring, you need to make sure that you're getting at least a C, if not better, right? Maintaining a 2.4 GPA, so that's the absolute minimum for transferring into a University of California. And again, it's important to note that not all University of California campuses participate in the TAG program, and not all majors are accepted into the program as well. So some of the more competitive UC, so like UCLA and UC Berkeley, do not participate in the TAG program, and some of the more competitive and impacted majors like engineering are not part of the TAG program. So again, it can be another way to transfer, an easier way to transfer. But again, you need to make sure that you're asking questions, that you know the specifics before making that decision as well. And another thing to note is that the TAG application is earlier than the regular application for admission. So if you are looking into this, it's important that you're planning early. Okay. Right. So bear with me here, you guys. So another way to transfer is something called the IGETC, or the Intersegmental General Education Transfer Curriculum. So I know that's a mouthful. You don't have to memorize all of that, but just know that it's called IGETC, right? So that's very common, IGETC. And so what this means is that it's a transfer plan that helps you determine if all of your lower division general education requirements are met for both the UC system and the CSU system. So most students will choose this plan because it is more broad. If students aren't sure yet whether they want to pursue a UC or a CSU for transfer, this is a great option. Or even if students, you know, they're planning to apply to both, and the IGETC is also an important piece of that, and it's, you know, a good general plan to follow. There's something else called the CSU certification. So if you know for sure you want to transfer to a CSU, you know Cal State LA, Cal State Dominguez Hills, I want to go there, you can do the CSU pathway instead, and it will be for only CSU campuses. And it's important to note that for private schools for transfer, they have their own particular requirements. So if you are looking at special programs or what you need to do for private schools, then you need to get in contact with that school specifically and look on their specific page. Another transfer resource is assist.org. So assist.org is a really awesome tool because it can tell you all of the transferable California community college classes that you can use, that you can take for a UC or CSU admission. So it's really important that when you're taking all of these general education classes, if you're taking major requirement classes, that they are transferable. And you can find that out using the catalog for your school, right? You can go online and look up the class that you're taking, or assist.org is a great central place that you can look up your school, look up the class, and it'll tell you the classes that are transferable and making sure that you're on the right track to transfer. Okay. So this is a little bit more about assist.org. I do have a video, but it's a little long, so I'm not going to play it right now. But here's some graphics on the sides. You can kind of see how easy it is to use and how straightforward it is to put in, you know, the year that you're looking for, the specific school or institution, and, you know, any transfer agreements that they have. So again, private schools have their own transfer pathways, so they may or may not align with the CSUs or the UC, so you want to make sure that you're contacting them directly. But you can learn about all the transfer agreements between schools using Assist, or at least the California community colleges and UCs and CSUs using Assist. So it's a really great tool to use. So make sure to check it out. Even, you know, if you're still in the exploration phase of trying to see what different schools have to offer you. Great tool to check out. Uh-oh, sorry guys. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay. So as mentioned before, there are a lot of career training programs offered at California community colleges. There are over 200 workforce training programs, so that's quite a bit, right? So if there's anything that you're interested in, like I said, medical assisting, cosmetology, automotive technology, criminal justice, right? All those programs are available at California community colleges. So they can provide hands-on training while building skills to be able to get jobs right after you receive that degree or certificate. And they're intended to specifically train students for those skills that are going to translate into those jobs, right? So a lot of the times, if you're pursuing a four-year degree, maybe you're taking classes that don't necessarily relate to a hands-on job. So these classes are very focused on, we're teaching you a certain skill, so that way when you are done, you can use that degree or certificate to get a job right away. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely look more into it and see what programs the community colleges in your area offer, and if there are any that are interest you. So they're shorter typically than a bachelor's program or even an AA program. Some of them can be 2 years, some of them are 18 months. It really depends. So again, you want to do your research and you want to make sure that you're asking questions. Okay, so I'm going to pause right here for any questions that anybody has. The second part of the presentation is going to go into how to apply, application checklists, and other things to look out for after you apply and register for classes. Let me go ahead and take a look at the Q&A. Okay, so we do have a question. Someone asked, why not go to a community college first then instead of a 4-year if I think it means like if you need the same requirements to graduate. Yeah, that's a very good question. And a lot of students think the same way, right? If they're thinking, well, I can save money. I'm completing the same classes. And at the end of the day, when I transfer, my degree is not going to say transferred from, LACC to UCLA. It's just going to say graduated from UCLA, right? So it's a very personal decision for students. So if that's something that draws you and you're like, hey, this makes more sense to me, definitely go ahead and pursue, community college. You definitely want to meet with somebody, talk to a college counselor, an advisor to go through that decision. But yeah, a lot of students think the same way. You save time and you're completing the same requirements. Let's see, and then we have a question about the Cal Grant. So what is the eligibility for Cal Grant B? Okay, so for Cal Grant eligibility for Cal Grant A and B, give me one second. So it's both based on merit and need, so based on financial need and then also grades. So overall for the Cal Grant program, you need to have a minimum of a 2.0 GPA and specifically for Cal Grant B. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the income ceiling is for Cal Grant B, but you can also find that at the California Student Aid Commission website. So it's csac.gov. That's everything financial aid related for the state of California. And there's links for a lot of really great resources. And we can drop that in the chat later too. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep moving on, and we'll go ahead and get to the rest of the questions at the end of the presentation. But again, please feel free to keep using the chat. Okay, so how to apply and register. So again, I'm using examples from California community colleges. So if you're planning to apply to a California community colleges, you can visit CCC Apply, kind of your main page, and you can go ahead and look up the college that you're interested in applying to. It'll take you to their homepage, and then from there you can set out to do the application. So an example, right? LACC, you can go straight to their webpage and begin the application there. For like deadlines, I guess if you want to call them, for applying to community college, there are no real hard deadlines, but you do want to be aware of when classes start, if there's any shorter session classes, when the semester begins, if there's winter session, summer session, right? So all of that you need to take into account when you're applying. If you're looking to start, in the fall, so say fall 2021, most of the applications will go live in the spring. So it's important that you're staying on top of when the application opens, so that way you can go ahead and get that done, get that out of the way, because there are some follow-up steps that you'll need to do as well. Okay. So here's an application checklist. So again, this isn't a full list, but I tried to add as much stuff as I could. So you want to make sure that you have all of your personal information when you start the application. Your full legal name, which is really important. So on any government identification, passport, social security card, your name needs to match that. So if you have 2 last names, middle names, all of that, make sure you're adding it. Your date of birth, your social security number if you have one, an up-to-date mailing address and up-to-date phone number. That's going to be very important, because if the school needs to get in contact with you or send you anything, a financial aid check, you want to make sure that everything's up to date. So if you're getting ready to move or in the process of moving when you're doing the application, make sure that you have all of the up-to-date information. All right, so you want to make sure that you have an accurate email, because that's the majority of how they're going to contact you. So you should always be checking your school email, but you also want to make sure that you're checking your personal email as well if you have it linked up. You need to make sure that you know the proper name of your high school attended, right? So not just the initials of it, right? You need to make sure that you know the full name. And then your educational information. So your college goal. So if you're planning to transfer, get an AA, a certificate, if you've attended any other colleges in the past. So if you're currently attending a community college and high school, you want to put that information. And then you also want to put your intended major and program of study. Okay. So some more information that you'll need to complete the application. You're going to need to answer whether or not you are a dependent student. So most students will be dependent of their parents, at least for financial aid purposes, until the age of 24. And then if you have a specific situation that you want to ask about, definitely talk to a counselor, talk to an advisor to help you with that piece of the application. You're also going to need your parents' highest level of education, your first generation college student status, and then any institution-specific programs. So if you have interest in sports, any special programs that you notice that they offer, and any particular services, right? So tutoring, if you know that you're going to need extra study time, things like that, offices that you'll need access to, the application will ask you as well. Okay. So the enrollment piece. So there are a couple additional steps, right, to enrollment. It's not just doing the application and you're done. Like most other colleges and universities, you'll have to complete some type of orientation. Now it is all virtual, but before, you could choose whether it was virtual or in person. But you need to do that. The assessment and the course placement piece has been removed for California community colleges, so you no longer have to take the assessment for your placement into classes, but you will need your transcript, so that's very important. And then you want to create an educational plan. So this piece is really important. You want to make sure that you're meeting with a counselor, talking over basically everything that you put in your application, right? What is your educational goal? What are you hoping to do? Do you want to transfer? And what is your timeline? And from there, they're going to help you pick your classes and get you a little bit more familiar with what to expect. Okay. And if at any point you have questions about the enrollment process or steps that you need to complete, you can always visit your school specific website or talk to a counselor or advisor. If you're a fulfillment fund student, definitely reach out to your counselor and they can help you with all of this as well. Okay, so then last, you want to make sure that you're actually registering for your classes, right? And this may seem straightforward, but it's almost like solving a puzzle, right? Because you have a little bit more freedom in college to pick your classes, create your schedule, you do have to set some time aside to make sure that you're building your schedule that's going to both, get all the classes that you need, but is also going to work for your needs as well. Are you going to work? Do you have family obligations during the day? Right? So all of these things that you're going to need to take into consideration while you're building that schedule. And of course, you can always ask for help too, right? The first time registering for classes is a little bit confusing. It's a new system. You're learning what all of these classes and codes and registration numbers mean. So it's totally okay to ask for help. We always have workshops as well to help with class registration. So all you got to do is reach out. Okay. So you have registered for classes, you have everything done, now what, right? So again, it's not just do your application and register and you're done. There are some follow-up steps that you're going to need to make sure that you're following as well. So you always want to make sure that you are checking your student portal and to-do list, right, for any document. So it could be financial aid documents, official transcripts, student surveys that they want you to complete. Any communication for anything that they need from you, it's going to be through your student portal or through your email. So you want to make sure that you're really checking those daily, if not more than that, especially as a new student. You're going to get a lot of notifications about things that you'll need to do and next steps. Check your student portal for any fees that are not covered by financial aid. This is a big one as well. So even if you are eligible for full financial aid, it's really important that you're on top of your student account, right? Errors happen or delays happen. So you want to make sure that one, you're receiving your financial aid, right? And if you are not receiving your aid, that you understand why and next steps in order to receive your money, right? So again, they're going to communicate all of that in your student portal. So you want to become familiar with it and get into a good habit of checking it and really going there for all of your needs, right? And those are just some examples on the side, things that may not be covered by your aid. So again, your student ID, some lab fees, and course materials. And then again, your student email. Very, very important. If you're not in the habit right now of checking your email in general, start doing that now. It takes a while to create good habits, right? So you want to start creating those good habits early. So if you're in high school still, great. You should start building that habit and make sure that it's, let's see, an email that is college appropriate as well, a professional email, right? So especially in the beginning, as you're doing applications and scholarships, your email might get a little bit cluttered. So it's a good idea to create an email that is just for college communications. So it doesn't get as cluttered and you can kind of see all the important communication that's going to be coming through. For your student email, all of your communications from the school will go there first, but you can always go ahead and forward your student email to your personal email as well. A lot of students will do that. But again, it's very good practice to go in and check your student email and your student portal. All of that necessary information that you're going to need will be there. Okay, so here's some things to keep in mind if your class is full. Ideally, right, we would hope that you get all of your classes right off the bat, that you don't have to worry about, scrambling to get more classes or being short any units, but obviously that's not always the case. So here's some things you can do if you do find yourself in that situation where you can't get all of your classes. You can always crash courses. So crashing courses means you show up the first day and you wait it out and see if anybody drops the class, and the professor can then give you something called an add code. So crashing courses now looks a little bit different because it's all virtual, but it would be the same thing. You would kind of see when the class is being held. You would need to reach out to the professor first to see if anybody has dropped the class. But again, crashing courses is a thing. You are able to do that the first day of class. Become aware of summer and winter sessions. So some classes may be super popular during the regular academic term in the fall and the spring, but you may be able to get them in the summer and the winter session, which is always a great option as well. If you're thinking about transferring, you want to also consider summer and winter classes as well, so you can get your requirements out of the way and make sure that you're progressing towards your goal. There's also something called dual enrollment. So meaning you can enroll in multiple community colleges. So particularly for students in the LA area, if you're attending one of the 9 LACCD community college campuses, it's a little bit easier because your one student ID number works at all of the LACCD community colleges. So you don't have to do a new application or anything like that. It's a little bit easier to take classes at those LACCD campuses. But regardless, if you are enrolling in multiple campuses, you want to make sure that you are communicating with both of those campuses so they are aware of the requirements that you've already completed at one campus, right? You don't want to start having to do things over again, so you want to make sure that there's that open communication. And then always reaching out to instructors, right? I think now more than ever, it's really important to be very communicative, right? We aren't seeing each other. We don't really know what's going on. So it's important that you're reaching out and talking to your instructors and your professors, especially if you want to add a class that is full, right? Don't be shy or embarrassed about doing it. I know it can be a little awkward the first time, but you can always ask for help and how to create that email and how to ask and how to word it. So that way your professor's a little bit more receptive to it. All right. Okay, so here's some resources on California community college campuses. So there's a lot, actually, and I'll go through a couple of them. So first year experience to, oops, sorry, my screen is freezing. Okay, first year experience to support first year students and that initial year at community college. It's a big transition year. So there are a lot of programs on campuses that will help those first year students get acclimated and help them plug into other resources on campus as well. A lot of these resources create community, right? And it's not just about going to get something from them like a fee waiver, right? But it can also provide a support system and a community, right? So whether you feel comfortable going to community college and you have friends that are also attending, or whether you're kind of going out on your own, it's really important to create that community and find spaces on campus where you can feel comfortable and you can ask questions and get the resources that you need. So there's some identity-based programs like Umoja and Puente, Black Collegians that focus on the identities of students and creating that community, but also offering academic resources, financial resources. There are academic resources like the Transfer Center, the Tutoring Center, where you can go and feel supported with your academics, whether that's math, science, English, right? Being assigned a tutor. There's CalFresh. So if you are struggling with buying groceries, most college students are eligible for applying for CalFresh. International Student Office, a Psychological and Wellness Services Office, all of these offices and resources on campus to make sure that you as a whole student are okay and that you can attend class and that you have everything that you need. Right, so if there's anything on here that you have a specific question about, please feel free to reach out and we can define it a little bit more. Oh, and then at the bottom here, if you are a Fulfillment Fund student, you have us as well, right? Whether you have your high school counselor or an advisor in college, or just, drop in for some questions or events from time to time, we're also a resource. So please feel free to reach out. Even, students or guests who are joining us that maybe are not part of the Fulfillment Fund, we're always here as a resource. So please feel free to reach out with any questions. All right. So we know this is going to be the first full academic year for most students. Learning virtually, and that can be a little bit challenging. So here are some tips that can try to make it a little bit easier to learn online. So making connections with staff and with students. That can be a little bit different now online, but there is definitely ways that you can still connect with people, connect with your professors. It may take a little bit more work, but I think now more than ever, it's important to make those connections and reach out to people. Right. Meet with your counselor regularly. So at least once an academic term, you want to meet with your counselor and make sure that you're going over your academic goals, career goals, and make sure that the path that you're on is still solid, right? If it needs to change or it needs to be updated, that's what that meeting time is for, to make sure that you're going over all that important information. You want to communicate early with your professors. So if you know now that virtual learning is difficult for you, whether because you're at home or whatever the reason may be, communicate with your professors. I think now, since spring, professors are becoming a lot more understanding, and a lot of them are struggling themselves with the virtual learning. So all you have to do is reach out and ask. Again, if you need help coming up with that initial email or how to word it, definitely reach out and we can help you with that too. Some other things, we already talked about this a little bit. So exploring different programs on campus that can offer additional support, right? So looking for those services that that can create that community and offer you those opportunities and support on campus. And then this is really important. I think people or students overlook this, is checking in with yourself, right? About your own goals and your own progress. It is you who is pursuing this education, this degree, this goal. So you want to make sure that it is something that you're still comfortable with, that you still want to pursue. And that's something that's still important to you. Let's see, we're doing countdown. All right, so a couple of common questions that we get, especially right now. So education during an uncertain time. Is it still worth it to enroll in college if I don't know what the next academic year will look like? So definitely yes, right? If education is important to you and going to college is important to you, you don't want to let anything stop you. It may be more challenging now, and there might be some different types of barriers that are present during this time. But I think that's why now more than ever, it's important that you're asking questions and reaching out and not closing any doors, right? Because it is so uncertain, we want to make sure that we're keeping our options open. But you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well. But definitely talk to somebody about what your next step is going to look like, and they can help you problem solve. Maybe right now you're not aware of all the options that are out there. So definitely connect with somebody and they can help point you in the right direction. The same thing goes, like what if the full year is still online? What if the following year is still online? Ask for support, right? If you're having doubts or you're uncertain, reach out, okay? And then for our transfer students, if I want to transfer, will the college know that it was a difficult time? And I want to say yes, from the colleges that we have been communicating with, admissions advisors and things like that, colleges both 2-year and the 4-year level are modifying a lot of policies and practices to take into account the pandemic. And again, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances. So again, you want to communicate. If you are anticipating an issue that is coming up, again, communicate, reach out, ask for support. That's going to be the theme of the day, right? You always want to make sure that you're communicating. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I know that was like a lot of information in a short amount of time. So I'll go ahead and start answering questions. And then please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A, okay? Okay, so I do have a question from a student about applying for the TAG program. Okay, so the TAG program is something that you're going to apply for once you are ready to transfer. So the TAG program is something that you're going to apply to once you're in college and you are ready to transfer. So if you're a high school student, you will not be applying yet, but it is important to have that information so you know how to prepare and kind of look at a timeline. We have another question. If you took classes in high school at a community college, do you use the same information to enroll after you graduate? Yes, so if I'm understanding correctly, let's say you took LACC classes in high school and then you will now be continuing on to LACC for your college, then yes, your student ID number is not changing. Your login information is not changing. You would just need to update your academic information. And then, you would be submitting your high school transcript to now transition over your status from high school student and being kind of concurrently enrolled to now full-time college student, being a student solely at that community college.